Dennis. Paging Dennis Caden.
We got a quorum, we're gonna get started, it's kind of late.
Kelly and Allison are a little late.
Start the recording. Good evening. I would like to call to order this special meeting of the Encinitas City Council for Thursday, June 29th, 2023 at 6 p.m. And if the clerk would please call the roll.
Councilmember Blackwell is not here at the moment. Councilmember Ehlers.
Here.
Councilmember Kinsey is absent at the moment. Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Here.
And Mayor Krantz.
Here.
Record will show that Councilmember Ehlers, Lyons, and Mayor Krantz are present, and Councilmember Blackwell and Kinsey are absent, and should they arrive, we will note the arrival time.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We have one item on the agenda tonight. It's a closed session item, conference with real property negotiator. The authority is Government Code Section 54956.8. The properties are parts of public roadway on Piraeus Street and Plato Place, adjacent to APN's number 254-144-01 and 216-110-35. And the city negotiator is Roy Sapal, the Development Services Director, and he will be negotiating with Brian Grover and Lennar Homes of California, LLC, and under negotiation is the easement price and terms. And I will add that the party to which we are negotiating this transaction are not part of the meeting. We are, in fact, working with our negotiator to establish a variety of, to give direction, basically. So that is the point of this meeting tonight. And with that, Madam Clerk, are there any public speakers?
Yes, we do have, we have 5. Donna Westbrook, Karen Caden, followed by Elliot Miller.
First of all, this meeting should not have been called. If you're only going to discuss it with the Roy Sapal, the Director of Planning, you could have put it all in whatever you wanted to give him direction for at an open meeting, which at this point, this becomes an illegal meeting. But I was noticing something, and I'm very disturbed about it, is that, and it's nothing with the city clerk's office, however, you have a portion above on this notice that says if anyone needs assistance, you have to contact the city at least 72 hours prior to the meeting. Well, if you're only giving people 24 hours, which says below, then you've already violated the ADA Act. So that in itself makes this another illegal meeting. Now, to get back to why are you having Roy do this, who is not a real estate consultant and who has probably done many, a real estate consultant who has probably done many other evaluations. I don't know, but there's something wrong, and this is another portion that I believe is illegal. Second, you're not going to have Brian Grover and Lennar Holmes. Well, the whole reason that you've got here makes it sound like you've already decided. You're going to say yes to this appeal that has not come to a finalization. And that in itself would be a question of where do you draw the line, and if this is why you do it, that you do it for the developer. This is another illegal thing. And if you want to continue on, we will continue on. But I would say at this point, you should say no to what you're going to do today. If you're all going on vacation, then why is this such a necessary need to do right now? The other thing that it's really concerning is that many people have, no, they don't want you to sell our public streets. So if you haven't heard them, maybe you'll hear them again. And if you're not going to let them vote on it, then what are you doing? You're a little dictatorship, a banana republic. Is that what you want to be called? Because that's what you're doing. This meeting should not be held tonight. So if all you can do is say, oh, we're just doing it because we just need an idea, it's not working. Cancel this meeting now. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I might need another 2 minutes. May I? Hi, Mayor. Hi, council members. It's really weird having a Thursday night meeting, but I am concerned because I just learned before I went to bed last night that this was on a special closed session meeting. So agenda item 1, the agenda item composed as closed session, written to the public to read as city negotiators to negotiate with Brian Grover and Lennar Holmes under negotiation, easement, price, and terms. Council, please direct the author of this agenda the words that should not mislead our understanding of the process agenda tonight, where the public, I know you guys understand exactly what the agenda item means to you guys, and I know the negotiation is going to be with the applicant, but we don't understand when we read something like that, it's sending a message to us, oh no, we don't like this behind closed doors, and that's what it feels like. So that's why we're here, and thank you, Tony, for your clarification. It was a little late during the day because we're working on things, and I just appreciate you being fairly direct, and thank you very much. Okay. We need an independent assessor prior to negotiations for public view also. As a reminder, Parcel A is the only housing element site, 6.88 acres, way back in the selection, not Parcel B, 4.92 acres. I do get the game that's being played with the applicant, adding it to 11.03 acres and making it look like 48% open space. And you all saw that 48% open space is not usable, never been, and people cannot even walk on it and enjoy it. I'm also concerned about setbacks. When you start talking about right-of-ways, there's a setback from the boundary of the city's property in the frontage of Prior's Point. And then when you change the right-of-way, then the setbacks are going to have to change. But also please consider the I-5 view corridor, there's also some kind of setbacks that need to be set so that it will not look so massive from the public view of 180,000 people or more that can see it daily. Also, trees in the right-of-way. I know Piraeus Point from the applicant shows that there's trees. I would like to see those trees as additional to what he is supposed to be putting, 30 trees per acre. Looks like he has no room with all his buildings, but that's not for us to worry about. It's a requirement, and he should be putting it on his property, and then the 30 trees outside, more trees outside to give a buffer. I talked about the setbacks. I-5 Scenic View Corridor, please have that into consideration. Also think about the buffer and for improvements. I would like to see Plato Place stop sign, have a wider right turn onto Piraeus, because we're going to be backed up at Plato. Plato Street is the only entrance into our neighborhood, over 250 people, and the school traffic uses Plato. So please consider some of the improvements. Besides, we know that we also like the safety and the safe walk to school. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Elliot Miller, followed by Dennis Caden, and then Doug Miller.
Thank you. My name's Elliot Miller, and I live on Carter Street for the last 20 years and have lived in the greater Encinitas area for 45 years. My 3 minutes revolve around the words safety and leverage. First, safety of the pedestrian traffic on Plato Place and Piraeus. My main concern is for the children who will be walking from the proposed project of the Piraeus Townhouse up Plato Place on their way to school. Currently, the road is a potential death trap. Plato needs a defined pedestrian pathway and probable straightening of the road. Yes, this would require some redesign of the road. However, the city of Encinitas does have the legal right-of-way to use our city's land for the project. The question then arises as to how to pay for the project. That is where the leverage comes in. The 0.9 acres of land that Lennar needs for their project to proceed is worth a lot of money. Without this land, the project would need some major redesign and possible downsizing, costing Lennar significant time and money. Since Plato Place would not require this major design if it was not for the townhouses being projected, the city should leverage this 0.9 acres of land in return for upgrades to both Plato Place and to Piraeus for safe passage to Olympus Park. The city of Encinitas should not be stuck with financing local upgrades which are needed due to private construction, who in the end is making a significant profit from the project. My recommendation is to negotiate as if the city of Encinitas is in charge and make sure that Lennar does not steal the property from us and that they pay their share of road upgrades. Otherwise, please do not approve the project. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for being here. I'm asking that you keep the right-of-way as a buffer from development and plan for the future. And how can you plan for the future? Oh, my name is Dennis Caden, sorry. How can you plan for the future without control of the right-of-way? The mobility element is planning to expand the width of Piraeus Street to a suburban collector status in order to create safer, wider bike lanes and pedestrian pathways. So we don't want to lose the ability to do that. Create at the bottom of Plato a right-hand turn lane to accommodate increased left-hand turn waiting times. We're beginning to see more waiting times now when the development is, if the development goes through, that'll generate even more. So a right-hand turn lane would be perfect for future needs. Also, the widening of Piraeus at La Costa is a definite must. You must control that area because future increased traffic will surely require this because bottlenecks already occur. You could build offset lanes at the egress and ingress of the Piraeus Point entrance. Some people spoke about speed on Piraeus. And yeah, some people do, it's been called a raceway by the Planning Commission, but we don't see it that way because it's only in one direction. In the way back towards Normandy, people don't do that, and where there's going to be increased traffic. So at the entrance to the Piraeus Point, you could control and have like a turnout lane and a turn-on lane for people going north, because it's going to back up, and that would be a safety feature. Include a serpentine walkway. If you control the right-of-way going down Plato, it's going to be steep. It's probably going to be a greater than 15% slope there. And so you could have a serpentine walkway coming down, control all that. The safe route to schools. The southern side of Plato actually has a wider right-of-way. Perhaps you could move that over where you have access, make a wider car lane so that you would have room for a sidewalk on the other side. And the only reason I see to sell the right-of-way would be to get way more than market value for this piece of property, primarily because it's the one and only thing that the developer has to have to make his project work. He's asked for waivers and incentives, and anyway, get as much as you possibly could, well above market value. Thank you. I'll be submitting a thing from Jim Baracus regarding where those sidewalks need to be done. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Doug Miller, followed by David Hill with a time donation from Teresa Ornelas, and then Michael George.
Hi, thank you. I'm the second house from the south on Plato, right next to the property. I wanted to just raise a couple things. I've submitted now twice the financials for Lennar. $45 million is real. They've signed off on their SEC filings. The officers under Sarbanes-Oxley are signing off to certify those numbers. So they've told us what they're going to make, basically. So that's the leverage we have as a city. Two other points. If we don't underground the power lines and we plant trees there, is there enough room to access the power lines if they need to? I don't understand how that works between the retaining wall, the power lines, and now a bunch of trees if they have access. So I'm not even sure it's workable. The other thing that Dennis talked a little bit about, I run and bike on Piraeus all the time. I go down Plato, I take a right, I go down. Right after you pass Piraeus Point, it goes downhill. Cars now fly down Piraeus, and I tell you, when I bike and run, that's the time I'm most worried. I get just below the rise, and cars are flying over, and that area is really narrow. I'm really concerned about now people flying down Piraeus. They're all of a sudden going to get distracted by people merging, and then going to go over this rise and encounter, somebody walking or on a bike. So that they've got to figure out how to mitigate that, because that's a really, really dangerous area, and I can tell you from personal experience. Thanks.
And he does have 2 time donations.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm David Hill. I know it's been talked about already, but I still have to make some comment on behalf of the community. And that was when we saw the closed session notice. Wait a minute, there's something wrong with this picture. You're going to go in, and we looked at it black and white. They're going to go into negotiations with Roy Sapal, who I've known for, 10 years or so, and Brian Grover, and knew him on the City of Encinitas Traffic Commission. And wait a minute, how does this work? And apart from that, who's figured out the cost of the property? Is there an appraisal going on here? Do you have an appraisal for the piece of property here? Because it's $72 a square foot, which is what for parcel B is being allocated for. Part of the, if you read the final environmental impact report. There's dollar values in there. And I suspect from the last questions that you asked before, you're not too familiar with the environmental impact report, because there were several issues, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But $72 a square foot, we're talking about $3 million, $10,862.20. And for people who are not familiar with how to negotiate with public property and money, and you're dealing with $3 million, really? Do we have someone qualified on the city to talk about that? How are we going to negotiate? You're dealing with Brian Grover, who now is in words of the street, he knows how the city operates. So he's like the fox walking into the chicken coop here. And I got information here that, not going beyond that, but I wouldn't go into negotiations on any of that with the city's money at stake. You got to be careful here. So first off, don't put the cart before the horse. Get the appraisal first. And we know how that is. We got an appraisal from the city for the Bluff property on Skyloft Road, and that took quite a bit of, what can I say, a lot of effort on everybody's part to get that, and that's being negotiated right now. That's in the works. But we know how appraisals go, and you got to get it done right. So that's what I'm saying. And then you go into negotiations. But at $72 a square foot, and it may even be more. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I think the property that Cannon wants is $20 million for the 6.83 acres. And that works out close to $72 a square foot. So applying the same amount, let them pony up $3 million for it. Okay? And then use that somewhere where it's needed. But certainly don't give it away for $50, not at least. The other issue I wanted to talk about was when we met on the last a week, yesterday, here, we talked about the water table. And if you look in the final environmental impact report, and you go to the appendices at the back, and you go to either Appendix C or D, and Geocon was the consultant, you will see the reports when they did the borings, and they came across, wouldn't you know it, water. Water table on the south side is at 15 feet below grade, and wouldn't you know it, on the upside to the north, there is a confined aquifer that's 29 feet below grade. Now, you're going to let them put these wonderful soil nail walls, which is not conducive where the soil is has water, if you will, because you can't get the the nails, for lack of a better word, into the soil, and they come down at an angle and they expand, and the annular space is encapsulated in a grout material, and then they come through the plate, and then they bolt it all up. But the interesting part of this, and the consultants don't talk about this. They ask me, "How are you going to do this?" They wouldn't answer me, because I know what the answer is. They're going to work from the top down. Can you imagine that? They come down 4 feet. They put the soil nails in. That's fine. And then they come down another 4 feet. But where are the water stops? How are they going to control the water stops? And if you're in the construction business, what I've been for the last 50-odd years, you say those water stops are most important, because that's where you get the seepage. And that's where you're going to start getting the rust. And that's where you're going to get the efflorescence. And that's where you get the salts come in. And that's where, because we call it aggressivity of the soil, because it's less than 7.0, which is the neutral for water, the pH. Above is alkaline, below is acid. And we talk about acid rain. Guess what's coming across the freeway? Is vehicle emissions. And when it rains, guess what? It condenses, goes into the soil. People are also using fertilizers. They have a neutral effect, or they have a positive effect on the soil. And all of these conditions help. And you think you want to drink that groundwater? It's not. It's not tasty, it's not good for you, but it's aggressive. And as soon as you start putting in those soil nails, it's a game over, because they don't have what we call, they're not stainless steel. They say they're coated, but that's the problem. If you use coated ones, they go in because they scratch. And then you get holidays, and that's where you get the aggressiveness of the water. But also, there's no cathodic protection in there. If you understand what cathodic protection is, that is an impressed voltage that you put on there to neutralize the positive ions that will turn the steel into natural ferrous hydroxide, which is your iron. Everything you put in there goes back to ferrous hydroxide. It wants to go back to how it was found in the beginning, and that's what you're fighting. All of that information, and I wrote about that in my response to the scoping EIR, and to the draft EIR, and to the final EIR, but I got nothing back from Lennar or Brian Grover, the wonderful construction person, okay? I didn't. Everything I told them fell on deaf ears. They weren't interested in discussing it. So we put all this effort for the last year and a half, but nobody bothers to read all that stuff. They don't. And I've read, and there's about 5,000 pages overall in not only the in the scoping EIR, in the draft EIR, and the final EIR, let alone the first one we put when we did the environmental analysis, and we sent it to Lennar, we sent it to Brian Grover, we sent it to Nick Koutafidis, and we sent it to Irvine, the head office for Lennar. And not one of them said, thank you very much for the information. It's most helpful. And what did they do? And it was based on CEQA. They followed the CEQA rules. But we started the ball rolling. Had we not, they would have rolled over us 10 ways till Sunday, which is not good. So anyway, I said my piece. Thank you for listening.
Michael George?
Good evening. My name is Michael George. I reside at 1703 Gascony Road, Encinitas, California. I want to thank you for being here this evening. I didn't expect to be here this evening. I'm kind of surprised when I got that notice here. So, David Hill just explained a lot to you of technical stuff that way above my head, my pay grade, okay? way above me. So I just have some things I'd like to bring out, because we're in this process of whether or not we're going to approve this project or not. And it's a very contentious project, as you can see from the public hearings that we've had so far. And I'm just wondering, and why this particular project in this particular location? I know the master plan picked out projects around Encinitas, and this is one of them, but I just don't see these townhouses, I guess you call them, in that area. I see this as like a downtown Encinitas project. That's where it actually belongs. From a well, you guys don't deal with that. All right, from an aesthetic point of view, let's say, I see it more belonging down there somewhere near 101. But maybe there's no land there, so it can't go there. I don't know. But the other thing that bothers me about this whole process is, if it's such a great project, why do they keep asking for these waivers? I mean, why do they need the waivers? That bothers me. I don't know if it bothers you, but it bothers me. If it's such a great project and such a boon to our community, Why do they need the waivers? And then the last problem is this little bit of land that they want. And how much is it worth? Well, I used to negotiate contracts, and it's a delicate kind of a thing. And so you need a lot of backing. You need a lot of experience doing it. I don't know this gentleman that's going to represent the city at all, but I'm just be very careful, is what I'm saying to you. In my experience, an experienced negotiator, if you're looking to get a substantial amount of money out of this to use in other areas, I would say go with a very experienced person. Thank you very much for listening to me. Appreciate it.
That concludes speakers.
Okay, thank you. And I would just point out that the closed session discussions are tightly controlled by state law. We're going to be discussing the parcels of land that, and the easement possibility, and you know, the how many appraisals to get, for example, that sort of thing. A lot of what was talked about here, I gave broad latitude for your comments, but much of that we won't be able to talk about it in closed session. So I appreciate you coming tonight and providing the input. It's certainly a forum for you to do that, but in the end, we're fairly restricted in what we're going to be talking about here tonight. So I see no request to speak from my colleagues, so with that, we'll adjourn to closed session.
Thank you.
And then you're coming back into the recorder,
Yeah,
correct?
we'll
Okay,
definitely put it out.
okay.
We